Hi everyone, it's Paul from Mantra Systems. Just a video about how to best work with Annex I of the MDR, which is the section that contains the general safety and performance requirements. This is a really important section because it's vital to understand which of the requirements apply to your device. And the Annex I can be quite a daunting annex to work with unless you have a strategy. And that's what this video is all about. So the first thing to understand about Annex I is that it's divided into 3 chapters. And we'll go through those in a little bit of detail and show you how best to work with them. So let's begin with Chapter 1. You can see from the title, General Requirements. All of the general safety performance requirements in Chapter 1 are indeed very general in nature. And a quick rule of thumb is that all of them will apply to all devices, with the exception of Requirement 9, which relates just to devices that are referred to in Annex 16 of the MDR. So there's just a small list of devices in Annex 16. So unless your device is one of those in Annex 16, you can disregard Rule 9. Remember, the important thing is to make a list of the requirements that are and are not relevant to your device. And for every one that's not relevant, you need to write a justification. So that's very straightforward when it comes to requirement number 9, because if your device isn't listed in Annex 16, then it's not relevant by definition. So Chapter 1 is very straightforward to work with. But Chapter 2 is where it gets a little bit more complicated. So these are requirements regarding design and manufacture. So the objective here is to try and eliminate as many sections as possible using the STEM sentences. And by doing that, you can start to reduce the amount of work that's necessary. And actually, it's fairly straightforward when it comes to most devices. So again, let's take an example device, and I'm going to use a cardiac pacemaker for this exercise. So looking at requirement 10, chemical, physical and biological properties. Well, a cardiac pacemaker is the device that's implanted into the body, so clearly its chemical, physical and biological properties will be relevant, and indeed this will be relevant to most devices. And so you can work through the bits underneath that STEM sentence number 10 and go into the detail of which are and are not exactly relevant, but using common sense it's usually straightforward to do that. So we'll, in the interest of time, we'll skip over the remainder of 10 and we'll keep moving forward until we find sections that perhaps are not relevant. So here, if you look at section 10.4.1, this is about risk posed by particles, including wear debris, but also there's specific sections about substances which are carcinogenic, mutagenic or toxic to reproduction. Now, from the materials that have been produced in relation to the device, it should normally be fairly straightforward to understand whether any of these types of substances are present. So suppliers, materials and so on will give the answer to that. If it's not, then it can be eliminated. Let's just skip forward to some of the later sections. So 11, so requirements 11 are about infection and microbial contamination. That will obviously be important in the context of something that is surgically implantable on a permanent basis. So all of the requirements under number 11 are likely to be relevant, with the exception of 11.7. So here it's inverted the situation a little bit. So the remainder of requirement 11 is about sterile devices, but here 11.7, packaging systems for non-sterile devices shall maintain the integrity and cleanliness of the product. Well, that has no relevance because a pacemaker is a sterile device, so that would be a straightforward justification. We get to requirement 12, and this is about devices incorporating a substance considered to be a medicinal product. Once again, that's probably not relevant to a pacemaker, and so requirements 12 can be eliminated. And similarly, requirements 13, devices incorporating materials of biological origin. You can see that this is also easy to exclude on a fairly straightforward basis, and the justification in turn will be very straightforward because a pacemaker does not contain materials of biological origin. If you adopt that same approach throughout the entirety of the annex, it's possible to hone in on just those requirements that are relevant to your device. The final section, Chapter 3, relates to requirements for labelling, and you can use exactly the same system for Chapter 3 as you use for Chapter 2. Thank you very much.